everyone, and welcome to another reading lesson. We have been reading the text The Year at Maple Hill Farm. We have learned about the winter. We have learned about the spring. We've learned about the summer, and today we're going to be learning about the final season in the text. Before we do that, we are going to be exploring the weather during this season too. So your teacher's going to pause the video and you guys are going to talk about what are some types of weather where we live. Where we live, we get all types of different weather because we get to see all 4 seasons. And right now, the weather that we're seeing is snow. It's cold, sometimes it rains, and that's the type of weather we see right now. In an earlier lesson, we practiced retelling key details in The Year at Maple Hill Farm. And today we're going to practice again using The Year at Maple Hill Farm so that we can better understand a new section of the text, which is all about the season autumn, also known as fall. Remember, to use your own words when you retell a text. And if the text is given information in a certain order, your retelling should match this order. And this text does an order of the season. So here we go. Our reading thinking job today is I can retell key details of a text. We're going to do that by 1, talking about what the text is mostly about. Step 2, what details help us understand the most. And then step 3, we're going to retell that story in our own words. Key details are important parts of the story. Who's the story mostly about? What's the story mostly about? Where and when is it taking place? And what is happening in the story at the beginning, the middle, and the end? So let's refresh our minds one last time what The Year at Maple Hill Farm is mostly about. Your teacher is going to pause the video. So we know this text is mostly about a year on the farm. We learn about the 12 months of the year, and we learn about the 4 seasons: spring, summer, autumn, and winter. And today, we're going to focus on autumn. Now that we've refreshed our memory about what the text is mostly about, let's dive into some pages of this text. Read these pages for you, and then you are going to talk about the weather on these pages that helps us know what month it's in. Then sometimes quite suddenly, a fresh wind blows. The summer is over, the days are shorter, September is here. Everyone begins to wake up after the heat of summer. The evenings are pleasant in September, and the horses are lively. They are brought in from the field to the shed. The horses aren't afraid of the blacksmith. They are used to him. They don't mind having their shoes nailed on. It doesn't hurt. Now the days are cooler and make sense of change is in the air. September is the first month of autumn. Autumn is a fine time for riding, even if it's raining. Most animals don't mind raindrops, but the big bay horse is ticklish and doesn't want to leave his stall. Animals can be very temperamental. Your teacher's going to pause the video and talk about what detail in the setting on this page helps us know it's September. I know when I listened to the words, I heard fresh wind blows and cooler. So the part of the setting we can talk about right now is the weather. The weather is cool and the wind is blowing. When I look at the illustrations, I see light in the background, and that tells me it's the time of day. So the setting is it's cool, the wind is blowing, and it's the daytime. What happens to the horses in the autumn? Go ahead and talk about it. I noticed the words and in the pictures tell about how the horses get shoes and people ride them. The details on these pages help me better understand that in the autumn time, the horses get shoes put on and people ride them. At these pages. I'm going to read these pages, and while I'm reading, I want you to start thinking about what you hear the text say about what happens to the animals in autumn on these pages. Animals, just as people do, sometimes have to take medicine. They have to take worm medicine, and they don't like it much. Some dogs will eat their pill if it's wrapped up in cheese and they can't smell it. Some dogs don't care what they eat, no matter how it smells. These never need worming. They even eat worms. They are lucky. Sheep will stand quietly to take their medicine if you get a good grip on them and hold their noses. Most cats will eat their medicine, mixed up with their dinner. But there is always a scratchy one who must be wrapped in a towel to have her pill pushed down. While most animals will take their medicine without too much of an argument, there are some who wouldn't. Some horses never make a fuss about pills. They don't taste so bad. Some horses are suspicious if pills are put in their green. It's not the taste, it's the smell that worries them. It's not easy to hold a temperamental horse's nose. You can't wrap up a horse in a towel. The vet has to be called, and he needs a helper to get the medicine down. Frightening as it is, it will all be forgotten in 1 minute. Animals don't hold grudges. The teacher's going to pause the video and talk about what happens to animals in autumn. I don't know about you, but I noticed there were many animals on these 2 pages, and what I heard these pages key detail was all of these animals take medicine. These pages are mostly about taking medicine during the autumn time. Take a look at these 2 pages. I'm going to read these pages, and while I'm reading, I want you to think about what happens to the wild birds. As well, what other key details in these pages help us understand what happens in the autumn time? October is a splendid month. The harvest is in, and early frost did away with all the insects. The hay is in the barn, the corn is in the crib. There's not much left to eat in the fields, and the animals stay closer to the barnyard. The chickens go to roost earlier, and not so many eggs are laid. October days are dry and bright, but still the wild birds are restless and begin to flock together. Children gather pumpkins, the squirrels are gathering nuts, filling their own storehouse with food. Soon the leaves will all be gone. At any moment, the migrant birds will rise and start their journey south. Your teacher's going to pause the video and you're going to talk about what happens to the wild birds, as well as what other key details help you understand what happens in autumn. By looking at the illustrations and hearing the words, we learn that the wild birds like to flock and fly together, and then they migrate south. The word migrate means they will be together and they will move somewhere. So they fly down south. What are some other key details that help us understand what happens in the fall time? I heard and I noticed in the illustrations that children are gathering pumpkins, squirrels are filling up their homes with food, the leaves are changing. I can see the beautiful and orange and yellow leaves, and the animals stay close to the barnyard. I wonder why the animals stay close to the barnyard. Think about what season comes after autumn. While I'm reading these 2 pages, I want you to think what key details on these pages help us understand what happens in autumn time. November. There's a frost nearly every night now. The air smells of snow and winter. The first thin ice is forming on the farm pond. The woods around the farm echo the huntsman's horn. The hunting hounds bay. In November, before winter comes finally, a few of the animals leave the farm. Some are sold, the finest are borrowed by the neighbors for breeding. North winds blow, the bare branches rattle. The forest is far from quiet in November before the winter settles in. A wild geese honk as they pass by. The saw and the woodsmen are noisy too. A few ganders are sent along as gifts. Everyone likes ganders. You can't have too many ganders, except in the barn through the winter. Your teacher's going to pause the video and talk about what key details in these pages help us understand what happens in the fall. We're coming to the end of autumn, and I notice that in the illustrations and the text, I see and I heard some of the animals leave the farm as gifts, and the pond is freezing over. So that tells me the weather is getting much colder, which means, as the text told us, winter is coming. We've gone through September, October, and November and learned about what happens with the farm animals during these months, and also looking at some weather that happens during autumn. Your teacher's going to pause the video and you guys are going to retell the major events, the key details. So what important details help us understand autumn in Maple Hill Farm? Go ahead and retell it in your own words. When I think back to the important details to help me understand autumn in Maple Hill Farm, I think first about horses getting shoes. That's the first detail we learned. Then we learned about all of the animals receiving medicine. We also learned about the wild birds flocking and flying together and going down south, migrating. And then at the end, we learned that some animals leave the farm, whether they're being borrowed or they're being sold. Today in Seesaw, you are going to be able to listen to all of the pages again and then answer the question, which detail should come first in a retell of these pages? Until next time, bye Kipsters.